Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Phaedra by the Roman playwright and philosopher Seneca. So Phaedra is a reworking of the Hippolytus myth following the same broad brushstrokes pattern as Euripides' Hippolytus, but Seneca's version is radically different. One component of that difference is that Seneca's distinctive philosophical outlook, specifically Stoicism, is central to the Phaedra. Another is that there are some significant plotline differences. And it's possible that Seneca's version was based on an earlier, now lost Euripidean version of Hippolytus, because we do know that Euripides wrote two versions of this story. The first received so much negative criticism that he wrote a second one. There was moral outrage about the first version, and it's possible that that became the basis for Seneca's take on the myth, because in Seneca's version, Phaedra is much less moral than she is in Euripides' version, right? So in Euripides, Phaedra is unwilling to disclose her incestuous desire to Hippolytus. She would rather die than do it. She is finally coaxed into revealing that information to her nurse, and then the nurse subsequently reveals it to Hippolytus. Whereas in Seneca, Phaedra herself plans to go after Hippolytus, and it is the nurse who attempts to restrain her. And only when it becomes clear to the nurse that Phaedra's desire will lead her into catastrophe does the nurse attempt to sort of take control of this situation and say, okay, here's how I can sort of damage control this situation, right? So she tries to take the lead on this in such a way that it will minimize the damage to Phaedra's reputation. Phaedra, for her part, in the Seneca, goes and is like, Hippolytus, I want to have sexy times with you, and also maybe you should be king instead of your dad, who might possibly be dead because he's been in the underworld for like 4 years and the clock's ticking on that, right? So Phaedra here is much more direct. She is much more aggressive in her desire for Hippolytus, whereas in the Euripides, she is much more demure. She denies her feelings. She refuses to act on them. She resists even when the nurse reveals to Hippolytus her feelings. And then there is the very strange twist in which Phaedra in the Euripides leaves a letter accusing Hippolytus of attempting to rape her when she goes to hang herself. In the Seneca, by contrast, Phaedra, so the nurse seems to come up with that plan in the Seneca, right? Phaedra goes and finds Hippolytus out in the woods. She confesses her love, tells him she wants to be his wife. She wants him to sit on the throne, etc., etc. And he is disgusted with her. He draws his sword, threatens to sacrifice her on Artemis's altar, or Diana's altar, because this is a Roman context. Although I think, at least in this translation from Penguin Classics, they still use Artemis, even though they use the Roman names for the other deities, like Mars and Venus, rather than Ares and Aphrodite. So that's interesting, but largely irrelevant to the point that I'm making, right? So Hippolytus has his sword. He is threatening to sacrifice Phaedra on Artemis's altar, and she says, "Yes, kill me, then I can die with my honor unstained, but also I die in your arms. I get everything I want." And he's like, "No, I am not giving you anything that you want. Now, this sword that I was going to sacrifice you with is tainted by you. I throw it on the ground and I'm going to peace out." The nurse then calls the chorus. And the chorus is interestingly different here as well, because in Athenian drama, the chorus never leaves the stage. In Roman drama, the chorus leaves the stage regularly, and they don't actually comment on the action too much during the plot itself. They sort of exist as scene transition bits. But anyway, again, so the nurse is like, "Oh, chorus, come look, Hippolytus. He raped Phaedra. Look, her hair's all messed up, and here's his sword. That's totally proof that he did it. Don't ask any questions." The chorus does not really believe this, but when Theseus returns, Theseus does believe it. He believes it when Phaedra tells him that Hippolytus raped her, and that is why she intends to kill herself. So, this is a major difference, right? In the Euripides, there's no opportunity for cross-examination, right? Phaedra hangs herself, leaving a note. Theseus believes it, and he acts accordingly. Here, Phaedra is alive, and she consciously chooses to lie about this thing to try to protect her own reputation. And while she does so at the prompting of the nurse, she does so nonetheless. So Seneca's portrayal of Phaedra is much more aggressive, much more violent, much more vicious, much more self-serving than Euripides' is. Theseus then curses his son. He uses his final wish of the three wishes his father Neptune, again, not the Greek name Poseidon, because this is a Roman context, but his father Neptune had promised him three wishes, and even though Theseus has been trapped in hell for like 4 years, because he went with his friend to try and steal the Queen of Hell in a convoluted thing that basically the purpose is just to have gotten Theseus out of the way for a while. Even while he was trapped in hell, he never used this third wish. He now uses that third wish to have his father destroy Hippolytus. Neptune does this. A messenger comes in and basically tells this long graphic story of the way in which Hippolytus died. It is so much longer and more detailed and more descriptive and gorier than the version in the Euripides. And this aligns with the Roman fascination for blood sports. We also actually open the Seneca version with Hippolytus sort of directing a hunt. And it's, again, a long speech that serves very little dramatic purpose apart from establishing that Hippolytus is a hunter. He is someone who engages in blood sport, and he sort of reflects this pastoral conception that gained currency within Roman culture at various times, this sort of pastoral ideal of like the simple country life of the hunter, the farmer, the shepherd, whatever it was, who lived this sort of glorious, pure life, away from the decadence and temptations and luxury and weakness of the city. And actually, Hippolytus makes a long speech to that effect later on in the play, after the nurse comes to him in the woods and is like, hey, go back to the city, have some comfort, have sex with some women, maybe Phaedra, you know? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, so we do have that element. And this is sort of the other big difference with the Seneca versus the Euripides version, is this is very much marked by Seneca's philosophical commitment to Stoicism. And we see this actually right from the beginning if we're thinking about it comparatively. Because the Euripides version starts with Aphrodite, a deity, coming in and saying, hey, I'm Aphrodite, and guess what? Hippolytus has slighted me, so I'm going to destroy his whole family. Sucks to them. In Seneca, there are no deities, right? So one of the principles of Stoicism was a sort of rationalism, a belief in the world that is observable. So the Stoics were less inclined than many others in the Roman world, the Greek world, the ancient world in general, to ascribe events or phenomena or whatever it was to the gods. And so the fact that we don't have, and the revelation does not come from the goddess Artemis or Diana in the Roman tradition. Because again, Seneca doesn't have deities come on stage. The revelation that Hippolytus was in fact innocent and Phaedra was in fact guilty comes organically from the storyline itself. So again, we've got that element of it. The Stoics also believed in self-restraint, in the repression of emotion, in logical and rational decision-making, rather than allowing oneself to be ruled by the passions. And this is really central, especially to the opening portion of the play. And ironically, it is the nurse who expresses this philosophy most concretely throughout at least Act 1, and I think into Act 2, perhaps, but especially in Act 1. Yeah, so in both 1 and 2, the nurse expresses this Stoic philosophy. Because Phaedra here is very different, right? Their roles are essentially reversed from the Euripides. In the Euripides, the nurse is like, yeah, go after him, jump Hippolytus's bones, but he'll actually love it, even though he says he won't. And Phaedra is like, no, I need to be moral and upright. It is better that I die than give in to these horrific desires. Here they are swapped. The nurse says, restrain yourself, pump the brakes. Phaedra says, no, I'm going for it. So we get this, again, these great sort of Stoic passages from the nurse. She says here to Phaedra, it's best to have upright desires in the first place and never to slip from the path, but the next best thing is discretion, knowing where to draw the line when you err. How far will you go, my poor girl? Why add to the disgrace of your house? Will you outdo your mother? Moral failings are worse than monsters. You can ascribe the latter to fate, but the former to character. So we have here a critique of, again, the sort of failure to restrain oneself, to behave rationally, to curb one's passions, and behave in a way that is morally upright, right? Virtue is central to the Stoic philosophy, And that includes restraint, it includes maintaining one's composure, it includes trying to correct an error when one has fallen into it, etc., etc. And Phaedra has failed from a Stoic perspective. She, shortly after this, responds, "I know what you're saying is right, dear nurse, but my desire compels me to follow the worst course of action. My mind spirals out of control, and I know it too, but every time it tries to come back, striving after sensible judgment, it's no use at all. It's like when a boatman tries to row his laden vessel up a river against the current. His hard work falls for naught. His boat is overcome and swept downstream. What good is logic? Desire has won and now rules me." So Phaedra even recognizes herself as a Stoic failure, right? She recognizes that this is a moral failing according to the moral laws and universe created by Seneca. She recognizes that she has fallen short of what she should be doing, and yet she is unable or unwilling to correct that error. She instead gives in to what she accepts as an error, and she sort of perseveres in this. So again, very, very different from the Euripides version. And instead, what we get is a sort of Stoic treaty on stage.